He looked down at his wife, 8 months pregnant and trembling on the cold marble floor, and felt nothing but cold contempt. Damon Sterling had the world at his feet, billions in the bank, a skyscraper with his name on it, and a lover who whispered lies into his ear. When Serafina begged for mercy, for the sake of their unborn child, he didn't just turn away. He threw her into a storm that would nearly kill her. He thought he was discarding a broken, cheating liability. He had no idea he was evicting the rightful heiress of the very empire he claimed to own. By the time the truth shattered his world, money couldn't save him, and sorry was a word that had lost all its value. This is the story of how one man's cruelty became his absolute destruction. The thunder over Manhattan wasn't just weather. It felt like a verdict. Inside the penthouse office of the Sterling Tower, the air conditioning was set to a chilling 60 degrees, but Serafina Sterling was sweating. She stood near the floor-to-ceiling window, her hands instinctively cradling her swollen abdomen. She was 8 months pregnant. Her ankles were swollen, and her back throbbed with a dull, persistent ache. But none of that compared to the nausea churning in her stomach as she watched her husband, Damon Sterling, pour a glass of amber liquid from the crystal decanter on his mahogany desk. He didn't offer her any. He didn't even look at her. "Damon, please." Serafina's voice was thin, cracking under the weight of the silence. "You have to listen to me. I didn't send those emails. I don't even know who Titan Industries is." Damon turned slowly. He was a devastatingly handsome man, sharp jawline, eyes the color of cold steel, and a tailor-made suit that cost more than most people earned in a year. But today, his face was twisted into a mask of pure disgust. "Stop," Damon said. The word was soft but struck with the force of a slap. He tossed a manila folder onto the desk. It slid across the polished surface and stopped just inches from her. "The IP address matches your personal laptop, Serafina. The timestamp matches the night I was in Tokyo. You sold the blueprints for the Helios project to my biggest competitor for, what, $2 million? He laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "I give you a monthly allowance of $50,000. You have black cards. You have jewelry worth millions. And you sell me out for pocket change? Was it just for the thrill, or did you want to see me fail?" "I didn't do it," Serafina cried out, tears finally spilling over. She took a step forward, but the woman sitting on the leather sofa in the corner cleared her throat. Isabella Caldwell. Isabella was everything Serafina currently felt she wasn't. Sleek, perfectly groomed, and radiating predatory confidence. She uncrossed her long legs and stood up, walking over to Damon to place a manicured hand on his shoulder. "Damon, darling," Isabella purred, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "She's clearly hysterical. It's the hormones. Maybe we should just call the lawyers and have her escorted out quietly. We don't want a scene." You did this," Serafina gasped, pointing a shaking finger at Isabella. "You've been trying to get rid of me for months. Damon, she has the passwords to my laptop. She was at the house the night you were in Tokyo, supposedly to pick up files for you." Damon slammed his hand onto the desk, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Enough." He walked around the desk, encroaching on Serafina's personal space until she was forced to back up against the cold glass of the window. The city lights flickered below, indifferent to her terror. "I trusted you," Damon hissed. "I picked you up from that nowhere town, gave you a life, gave you a name, and you stabbed me in the back." "I am carrying your son," Serafina whispered, looking up into his eyes, searching for the man who had once promised to protect her. "Doesn't that matter? Even if you hate me, think about him. It's storming outside. I have nowhere to go. My blood pressure. Dr. Harrison said I need bed rest." "Dr. Harrison is on my payroll," Damon sneered. "And as for the child," his gaze dropped to her stomach, devoid of any warmth. "How do I even know it's mine? If you're capable of selling my secrets to competitors, you're capable of sleeping with them too." The accusation stole the breath from Serafina's lungs. She fell to her knees, not for dramatic effect, but because her legs simply gave out. The physical pain in her lower back flared into a sharp cramp. "Damon, please," she begged, touching the hem of his trousers. "I swear on my life this baby is yours. Just let me stay until the birth. Put me in the guest house. Lock me in the basement. I don't care. Just don't throw me out tonight. Not like this." Isabella laughed softly. Look at her. Pathetic. A begging dog. Damon looked down at the woman he had married 2 years ago. He felt a flicker of something, maybe guilt, but he crushed it instantly, fueling his rage with the fabricated evidence Isabella had fed him for weeks. He kicked his leg out, shaking off her grip. "You have 10 minutes, Damon said, his voice void of emotion. "Grab whatever you can carry. Leave the jewelry. Leave the cards. If you're not out of the building by then, security will drag you out." "Damon, get out!" he roared, his face contorted with fury. "Get out before I kill you myself." Serafina flinched, scrambling backward on the floor. She looked at Isabella, who offered her a small, triumphant smirk, and mouthed the word, "Bye." Serafina realized then that there was no mercy to be found here. She used the desk to pull herself up, her body trembling violently. She didn't take the elevator to the penthouse suite to pack. She didn't take her coat. She simply turned, clutching her stomach, and walked toward the heavy oak doors. As she opened them, she looked back one last time. Damon had already turned his back to her, pouring another drink, while Isabella whispered something in his ear that made him nod. He had made his choice. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like a descent into hell. Serafina leaned heavily against the mirrored wall, watching her own reflection. She looked ghostly pale, her dark hair plastered to her forehead with sweat. A sharp contraction seized her, forcing a guttural groan from her throat. It was too early. It was too soon. When the doors opened, the night security guard, an older man named Mr. Henderson, looked up from his desk. He had always been kind to her, Mrs. Sterling. He stood up, concern etching his face. "Good Lord, Ma'am, are you all right? You look." "I'm fine, Mr. Henderson," she lied, her voice barely a whisper. She couldn't tell him. She couldn't bear the shame. I need some air." She couldn't bear the shame. I need some air." She pushed past him and out the revolving doors. The storm hit her instantly. It wasn't just rain, it was a deluge. The wind howled through the canyons of Manhattan, tearing at her thin silk blouse. The temperature had dropped, and the freezing rain soaked her to the bone within seconds. She stumbled onto the sidewalk. Fifth Avenue was a blur of headlights and honking horns. She had no phone. Damon had smashed it weeks ago in a fit of jealousy, and the replacement was on his plan, which she knew he would track. She had no wallet. She had nothing but the clothes on her back and the life inside her. Where do I go? She began to walk, aimlessly, just trying to put distance between herself and the Sterling Tower. Every step sent a jolt of pain through her spine. The water pooled around her ankles, ruining her shoes, but she kept moving. "Taxi!" she cried out weakly, raising a hand. A yellow cab slowed down, saw her disheveled state a pregnant woman, looking like a drowned rat, and sped up, splashing dirty puddle water onto her legs. She walked for blocks. 10 blocks. 20. Her vision began to blur. The city, usually so bright, seemed to be darkening around the edges. "I can't lose him," she thought, wrapping her arms tighter around her belly. "I can't lose my baby." She reached a quieter street, lined with brownstones. Her legs finally refused to cooperate. A blinding pain ripped through her abdomen, doubling her over. She let out a scream that was swallowed by the thunder. Serafina collapsed onto the wet pavement near the wrought iron gates of a large townhouse. The cold concrete scraped her cheek. She could feel warmth spreading between her legs, blood. Water? She didn't know. "Help," she whispered into the wet asphalt. "Please." Her eyes fluttered shut. The last thing she saw was the blurry image of headlights cutting through the darkness. A car had stopped. Not a taxi. A long, sleek vehicle. A door slammed. Rapid footsteps splashed through the puddles. "My God, call 911. Get the medical kit from the trunk." A male voice shouted. It sounded authoritative, cultured, and terrified. Strong hands turned her over gently. "Can you hear me, miss? Stay with us." Serafina forced her eyes open for a fraction of a second. A man was hovering over her. He had silver hair and wore a tuxedo, seemingly unbothered that the rain was ruining it. He looked vaguely familiar, like a ghost from a past she had buried deep. "Baby," she mumbled. "Save my baby." "We've got you," the man said, lifting her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. "Drive, go to Mount Sinai now. Forget the ambulance, we won't make it in time." As she was placed onto the soft leather of the back seat, darkness finally claimed her. Back at Sterling Tower, the mood was celebratory. Damon sat on the leather sofa, the storm outside merely a backdrop to his liberation. Isabella was busy pouring champagne. "You did the right thing, Damon," she said, handing him a flute. She was a leech. A corporate spy. Imagine if the board found out you were harboring a traitor. The stock would have plummeted. Damon took a sip, the bubbles harsh against his throat. I can't believe she would sell the Helios designs. I gave her everything." "Some people are just greedy," Isabella said, sitting next to him and running a hand through his hair. "But she's gone now, and you have me. I would never betray you. I've been loyal to Sterling Corp for 5 years. I know the business better than she ever did." "You're right," Damon sighed, leaning back. "It's done. Tomorrow I'll have the legal team draft a statement. Irreconcilable differences. We'll seal the records about the theft to save face." "A toast," Isabella smiled, clinking her glass against his. "To the future. A future without dead weight." "To the future," Damon echoed. But as he drank, he couldn't shake the image of Serafina's eyes wide, terrified, and filled with a truth he had refused to see. The next morning, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a deceptive calm over the city. Damon woke up in the penthouse bedroom, Isabella still asleep beside him. He felt a headache brewing, a hangover from the whiskey and the guilt he wouldn't acknowledge. He showered, dressed, and went down to his office. He expected a quiet morning. Instead, he found his personal assistant, chaotic and pale, standing by his desk. "Mr. Sterling," she stammered. There's a problem. What is it?" "Coffee isn't ready." "No, sir. It's the bank. The financing for the Helios project. It's been pulled." Damon froze. "What? That's a $3 billion loan." "We signed the papers last week." "Who pulled it?" "The guarantor, sir." The bank said the primary guarantor withdrew their collateral. "I am the guarantor," Damon shouted. "Actually, sir, you aren't," a deep voice came from the doorway. Damon spun around. Standing there was Arthur Peneligon, the chief legal counsel for Sterling Enterprises. He looked grim. "What are you talking about, Arthur?" "When your father passed the company to you, the liquidity was low," Arthur explained, walking into the room and closing the door. "To secure the massive loans for your expansion and the Helios project, the bank required a co-signer with unblemished AAA assets. You didn't qualify a loan because of your leveraged debts. So, who signed it?" "Your wife," Arthur said quietly. Damon laughed incredulously. "Serafina, she was a waitress when I met her. She has no assets." Arthur pulled a document from his briefcase. "You never looked into her background, did you, Damon? You were so busy playing the savior that you never asked who she really was. Serafina didn't take your money because she needed it. She took it to make you feel like a man." Damon snatched the paper. "It was a deed of trust. Serafina isn't a cross," Arthur continued. "That was her mother's maiden name. Her father is Alexander Rothschild." The room went silent. The silence was heavy, suffocating. The Rothschilds weren't just rich. They were old money. They were the kind of wealthy that didn't appear on Forbes lists because they owned the people who made the lists. "That's impossible," Damon whispered, the blood draining from his face. It is very possible she estranged herself from her father to marry you because he didn't approve of you. He called you new money trash. She put up her personal trust fund worth nearly $4 billion as collateral for your company. Last night at 3 a.m., a power of attorney was activated. The trust has withdrawn backing. Arthur looked at Damon with a mixture of pity and judgment. The bank just called the loan, Damon. You have 24 hours to pay back $3 billion, or Sterling Enterprises enters receivership. You're broke. Damon staggered back, hitting the edge of his desk. Where is she? Get her on the phone. Tell her it was a mistake. We can't, Arthur said. I tried calling. The number is dead. And, Mr. Sterling, the hospitals. There's a report from the NYPD. What report? Damon's heart hammered against his ribs. A Jane Doe matching her description was found on 74th Street last night. Massive hemorrhaging. She was picked up by a private vehicle registered to the Rothschild estate. But the police report noted a copious amount of blood at the scene. Arthur paused, delivering the final blow. If she lost that baby because of the stress, Alexander Rothschild won't just bankrupt you. He will hunt you for sport. The Mount Sinai Kravis Children's Hospital was locked down, not by the police, but by a private security firm that made the Secret Service look like mall cops. Men in dark suits with earpieces stood at every elevator bank and stairwell on the 10th floor. Damon Sterling sprinted into the lobby, his tie loosened, his expensive Italian shoes slapping against the linoleum. He had run 3 red lights to get here after Arthur had tracked Serafina's location. He rushed toward the reception desk. My wife, Serafina Sterling. She was brought in last night. I need to see her. The nurse behind the desk didn't even look up from her screen. I have no patient by that name, sir. Don't lie to me. Damon slammed his hand on the counter, drawing stares from the waiting room. She's here. I know she's here. She was brought in by Alexander Rothschild. The nurse's demeanor changed instantly. She looked up, her expression turning from indifference to guarded caution. She picked up a phone, dialed a single digit, and whispered, He's here. 2 minutes later, the elevator doors pinged open. It wasn't Serafina. It was a man Damon recognized from the covers of the Wall Street Journal and Time magazine. Alexander Rothschild. He was in his late 60s, but he carried himself with the vitality of a man half his age. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than Damon's car. His eyes were the same shade of blue as Serafina's, but where hers were usually warm, his were glaciers. He walked toward Damon, flanked by 2 hulking bodyguards. He didn't stop until he was mere inches from Damon's face. Where is she? Damon demanded, though his voice wavered under Alexander's intense glare. Is she okay? The baby? Alexander stared at him for a long, agonizing moment. When he spoke, his voice was terrifyingly calm. You have forfeited the right to ask questions, Mr. Sterling. She's my wife. She is my daughter, Alexander corrected, and as of this morning, my lawyers filed for an emergency annulment based on fraud and abuse. You are no longer her husband in any way that matters. Fraud? Damon laughed nervously. She's the one who sold my company's secrets. I kicked her out because she betrayed me. Alexander stepped closer. The air around them seemed to drop 10 degrees. Do you know how much Serafina is worth, Damon? Her trust fund generates $40 million a year in passive interest alone. Do you honestly believe she would steal blueprints for a paltry $2 million? She could buy your entire empire with her checkbook and burn it down for entertainment. The logic hit Damon like a physical blow. Arthur's words from the office came rushing back. She didn't need the money. Then why? Damon stammered. Why did the IP address match? Why did she leave? Because she was set up, Alexander said, his lip curling in disgust. And you, in your arrogance, didn't bother to ask a single question. You threw a woman who was 8 months pregnant with your heir out into a freezing storm. Damon swallowed hard. The baby. Is the baby okay? Alexander's face hardened. A flicker of genuine pain crossed his eyes, quickly replaced by rage. My grandson was born via emergency C-section at 4:12 a.m., Alexander said quietly. He weighs 3 pounds. His lungs are undeveloped because of the stress-induced labor. He is currently in an incubator, fighting for every breath. Serafina hemorrhaged. She flatlined twice on the table. Damon felt the blood drain from his face. The room spun. I didn't mean for... You didn't mean... Alexander cut him off, his voice rising for the first time. Intentions are for children. Adults are judged by their actions. You chose a mistress of your wife. You chose your ego over your family. And now you will face the consequences. I want to see them, Damon whispered, broken. If you take one step toward that elevator, Alexander said, signaling his guards who stepped forward, cracking their knuckles, I will have you removed, permanently. You are not welcome here. Go back to your blast tower, Damon. Watch it crumble. That is the only mercy I will grant you. I will let you watch your life fall apart before I bury you. Alexander turned his back and walked away. Wait, Damon shouted. Please, tell her I'm sorry. Alexander didn't look back. The elevator doors closed, sealing him off from the only things that suddenly mattered. Damon stood alone in the lobby, the weight of his choices crushing him. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out numbly. It was a notification from Bloomberg News. Breaking. Sterling Enterprises stock plummets 40% as primary financing collapses. Rumors of CEO misconduct circulate. It had begun. By the time Damon returned to Sterling Tower, the atmosphere had shifted from panic to a funeral wake. Employees were huddled in cubicles whispering. Phones were ringing off the hook, unanswered. He stormed into the penthouse, looking for the one person he could still blame. Isabella was lounging on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. She looked unbothered, sipping an espresso. When she saw Damon, she didn't rush to comfort him. She merely raised an eyebrow. You look terrible, she noted. Get up, Damon said, his voice trembling with suppressed violence. Isabella sighed and stood up. What now? Did the little wifey cry to the press? She's a Rothschild, Damon said. Isabella paused. For a split second her mask slipped a flash of genuine surprise, but she recovered instantly. Who? Serafina, don't be ridiculous. She's a nobody from Ohio. She is Alexander Rothschild's daughter, Damon roared, advancing on her. She was the one financing the company, and you planted that evidence. Isabella chuckled. It was a dark, ugly sound. She walked over to the desk and picked up her purse. Well, I suppose the cat's out of the bag. I didn't think you'd figure it out this fast. I gave you credit for being an idiot, Damon, but not this much of an idiot. Damon froze. What did you say? I said you're an idiot, Isabella smiled, but her eyes were cold. Did you really think I was in love with you? Please, you're arrogant, easily manipulated, and frankly boring. You set me up. I did, she admitted freely. I work for Titan Industries. You know, the competitor you accused Serafina of selling to? They paid me $5 million to dismantle Sterling Enterprises from the inside. The goal was to stall the Helios project so they could launch their version first. Damon felt sick. The betrayal was total. The emails, the IP address, remote access Trojan, Isabella said, checking her nails. I installed it on her laptop months ago. It was so easy. You were so eager to believe she was the villain, because it justified you sleeping with me. You wanted a reason to get rid of her, Damon. I just gave you the excuse. Damon lunged at her, grabbing her by the arms. You ruined my life. You killed my son. Isabella didn't flinch. She looked at his hands on her arms with disdain. Let go of me, or I press charges for assault, and believe me, with your current reputation, the police will lock you up in a heartbeat. Damon shoved her away. She stumbled but caught her balance, smoothing her dress. "I'm leaving now," she said calmly. "Titan has a job for me in London." "Oh, and Damon, don't bother suing. The money I transferred out of your operational accounts this morning is already in the Caymans. Consider it a severance package." "You stole from me?" Damon gasped. "I took what I earned," she said, walking toward the door. She stopped at the threshold, looking back at the shattered man standing in the center of his collapsing empire. "You know the funniest part? Serafina actually loved you. She never told you about her money because she wanted to be sure you loved her, not the Rothschild fortune. She picked you over her father, and you threw her away for a knockoff version." The doors slammed shut. Damon was alone. The silence of the penthouse was deafening. He walked to the window where, just 24 hours ago, he had stood with a drink in his hand, feeling like a god. Now he looked down at the city and felt a terrifying urge to let gravity take him. But he couldn't. Not yet. He had to fix this. He ran to his desk and hit the intercom button. "Arthur, get in here!" Arthur Penhaligon appeared moments later. He looked exhausted. He had likely been fielding calls from the SEC and the bank all morning. "Isabella is gone," Damon said, his voice hollow. "She was a spy for Titan. She framed Serafina. She drained the accounts." Arthur closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. "We need to call the FBI." "But Damon, that won't save the company. The Rothschilds have triggered a liquidity freeze. No bank in the Western Hemisphere will touch us. We can't make payroll next week." "I don't care about the company," Damon shouted, sweeping the crystal decanter off his desk. It shattered against the wall, amber liquid staining the expensive wallpaper. "I care about my wife. I care about my son. How do I fix that?" Arthur looked at him with pity. "You can't fix this with a deal, Damon. You can't fix this with a deal, Damon. You destroyed the trust. The only way, the only slim chance you have is to prove you are willing to lose everything to earn her forgiveness. But even then, Alexander will likely never let you near her." "I have to try," Damon said. "I need to get into that hospital. Security is tight. Mossad XRs, you can't just walk in." "I know," Damon said, a dangerous glint entering his eye. "But I built that hospital's new wing 3 years ago. I have the blueprints." Arthur stared at him. "Are you suggesting breaking into a hospital guarded by the most powerful family on Earth?" "I'm going to see my son," Damon said, buttoning his jacket. "Or I'm going to get arrested trying. Either way, I'm not sitting in this tower while my family dies." "Damon," Arthur warned, "if you do this, there is no coming back." "I'm already gone," Arthur warned. "If you do this, there is no coming back." "I'm already gone, Arthur." Damon grabbed a heavy flashlight from his emergency kit and headed for the service elevator. He was done being the CEO. He was done being the businessman. Tonight, he had to be something he hadn't been in years, a desperate man with nothing to lose. The rain had returned, harder than before. Damon parked his car 3 blocks away from Mount Sinai. He wore a maintenance jumpsuit he had swiped from the janitorial closet at Sterling Tower and a baseball cap pulled low. He moved through the shadows, avoiding the main entrance where the media vans were already setting up camp. The story of the Sterling collapse was leaking. He circled around to the loading dock. A delivery truck was just exiting. As the heavy steel gate began to roll down, Damon sprinted. He slid under the closing gap, the metal teeth missing his heels by inches. He was in. He navigated the basement corridors by memory. Service Elevator 4 goes directly to the NICU supply closet. It was a design flaw he had noted during construction, but never fixed to save costs. The irony wasn't lost on him. He reached the elevator and swiped a stolen maintenance card. The light turned green. As the elevator rose, Damon's heart hammered against his ribs. He wasn't praying for the company. He wasn't praying for his reputation. He was praying that the tiny heartbeat he had ignored for 8 months was still beating. The doors opened onto the 4th floor. The NICU. It was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of monitors. The lights were dimmed. Damon stepped out cautiously. He saw the security guards at the main station, drinking coffee. He hugged the wall, moving toward the high-risk isolation unit. Room 402. The name on the digital display made his knees weak. Baby boy Sterling Rothschild. They had hyphenated it. They hadn't erased him completely. Not yet. Damon slipped into the room. It was warm inside, filled with the hum of machinery. In the center of the room was a clear plastic incubator. Damon approached it slowly, terrified of what he might see. Inside lay a tiny, fragile creature. Wires were taped to his translucent chest. A tube ran down his throat. He was so small fits in the palm of your hand small. His skin was reddish and wrinkled, but his chest was rising and falling. "I'm sorry," Damon whispered, tears streaming down his face, blurring his vision. He reached out a hand but stopped before touching the plastic. "I'm so sorry, little one. I didn't know. I should have known. He has your chin." The voice came from the shadows in the corner of the room. Damon froze. He turned slowly. Sitting in a wheelchair, hidden by the dim lighting, was Serafina. She looked terrible pale as a sheet, dark circles under her eyes, an IV drip connected to her arm. She was wrapped in a thick blanket. "Serafina," Damon breathed. He took a step toward her, but she held up a hand. "Don't," she said weakly. Her voice wasn't angry. It was just tired. Bone-deep tired. "My father's guards are outside. If I press this button, they will come in here and break every bone in your body. I had to see him. And you saw him," she said, looking at the incubator. "He's fighting for his life because his mother was thrown out into a storm. Because his father decided a lie was more convenient than the truth." "I know about Isabella," Damon said hurriedly. "I know she framed you. I know I was a fool. I fired her. I'm destroying her. I don't care about the money, Serafina. I don't care about the company. I need you to know that I love you." Serafina looked at him, her eyes sad and old. "Love isn't what you say, Damon. It's what you do. You didn't trust me. You didn't protect me. You humiliated me." She wheeled herself slightly closer to the incubator. "My father wants to destroy you. He wants to buy your debt and foreclose on everything you own. He wants to leave you on the street, just like you left me." "Let him," Damon said, dropping to his knees. "I deserve it. I'll sign everything over. The tower, the accounts, the cars. Take it all. Just, please, let me be a father to him. Let me earn my way back." Serafina studied him. She saw the grease on his face, the desperation in his posture. This wasn't the arrogant tycoon who had looked down on her yesterday. This was a man who had been broken. "You can't earn this back, Damon," she whispered. "Some things once broken stay broken." Suddenly the door burst open. "Get away from her." Alexander Rothschild stood there, flanked by 3 guards. His face was purple with rage. "Daddy, wait!" Serafina cried out, wincing in pain as she sat up. "Get him out of here!" Alexander commanded. 2 guards grabbed Damon by the shoulders, hauling him up. Damon didn't fight back. He looked only at Serafina. "I love you," he shouted as they dragged him toward the door. "I'm sorry. Save our son. Throw him in the alley," Alexander barked, "and call the police commissioner. I want him charged with trespassing and harassment." As the doors swung shut, the last thing Damon saw was Serafina weeping, her hand pressed against the glass of the incubator. The descent was not a slow slide. It was a free fall. 2 days after being physically thrown out of Mount Sinai Hospital, Damon Sterling sat in a plastic chair in the crowded waiting room of the 19th Precinct. He wasn't wearing his bespoke suit anymore. It had been seized as evidence of his trespassing and replaced with a gray sweatsuit provided by his lawyer, Arthur Penhaligon. Arthur looked weary. He placed a briefcase on the table between them. I managed to get the harassment charges dropped, Arthur said, his voice flat. Alexander didn't want Serafina to have to testify. He wants to protect her privacy more than he wants to see you in Rikers Island. But Damon, that's the only good news. Damon rubbed his face. He hadn't shaved in 3 days. Tell me. The banks have foreclosed on everything. The penthouse is being padlocked as we speak. Your personal accounts have been frozen by the IRS pending an audit triggered by the anonymous tip about the missing funds Isabella stole. You have zero liquidity. And the company? Damon asked, though he already knew the answer. Sterling Enterprises is gone, Arthur said gently. The board voted this morning. They accepted a hostile takeover bid to save the stock from being delisted. Who bought it? Arthur hesitated. Titan Industries bought the assets, but the real estate portfolio, the Sterling Tower itself, was purchased by a private holding company. Rothschild, Damon whispered. Arthur nodded. He bought the building for pennies on the dollar. He plans to strip your name off the facade tomorrow morning. He's going to turn it into the new headquarters for the Rothschild Foundation. Damon let out a hollow laugh. It was over. The legacy his father had built, the empire he had sacrificed his marriage, for it was all dust. I have one more thing, Arthur said, sliding a thin envelope across the table. I'm resigning as your counsel, Damon. I can't represent you anymore. The firm is distancing itself. This is a check for the retainer balance. It's about $5,000. It's all you have left in the world. Damon stared at the envelope. $5,000. He used to spend that on a single dinner. Now it was his lifeline. Arthur, Damon said, looking up at the man who had been his father's friend, thank you for trying. Arthur stood up, buttoning his coat. He looked at Damon with a mixture of disappointment and sadness. You were a good man once, Damon. I hope you find him again. I hope you find him again, but don't go back to that hospital. Alexander wasn't bluffing. Next time, you won't walk out. The next few weeks were a blur of humiliation. The media feasted on the carcass of Damon's life. The New York Post ran the headline, Starling Silver, more like rust. They printed photos of Isabella partying on a yacht in the Mediterranean, captioning it with details of her whistleblower payout, while Damon was photographed leaving a pawn shop where he had sold his Rolex. He couldn't stay in Manhattan. The city felt like a prison of memories. Every corner reminded him of the life he had torched. He took a bus to Queens. He found a run-down motel in Long Island City that charged by the week. The room smelled of stale smoke and mildew. The wallpaper was peeling, and the sirens outside never stopped. For the first month, Damon did nothing but drink cheap whiskey and stare at the ceiling. He wallowed in self-pity. He hated Isabella. He hated Alexander. He even hated Alexander. He even hated Serafina for a fleeting moment for not fighting for him, before the crushing weight of his own guilt suffocated that thought. You did this. The voice in his head whispered constantly. You chose the snake. You threw the dove into the storm. He hit rock bottom on a Tuesday night in November. He had run out of money. The $5,000 was gone. The motel manager was banging on the door, demanding rent. Damon sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, holding a bottle of sleeping pills he had bought from a pharmacy. He was tired, so incredibly tired. The world clearly didn't need Damon Sterling. His son would grow up a Rothschild, wealthy and protected. Serafina would find someone kind, someone who didn't measure love in stock options. He unscrewed the cap. Ding! His old phone, which he had kept only for emergencies, lit up. He had set a Google alert for Serafina Sterling months ago. He almost didn't look, but his thumb moved of its own accord. It was a paparazzi photo, grainy and taken from a distance. It showed Serafina leaving the hospital. She looked frail, pushing a stroller. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking down at the baby with a fiercely protective expression. The caption read, Heiress Serafina Rothschild takes miracle baby Leo home after 3 months in NICU. Leo. Damon stared at the photo. The boy had a name. Leo. Lion. He looked at the pills in his hand. If he took them, he would never see Leo. He would never hear his voice. He would be nothing but a cautionary tale, a ghost story Serafina would tell Leo to warn him about bad men. Damon poured the pills into the toilet and flushed them. He packed his single duffel bag. He walked out of the motel, past the screaming manager, and out into the cold night air. He had no money. He had no home. But for the first time in months, he had a purpose. He wasn't going to die. He was going to work. 6 months later. The sun beat down on the construction site in the Bronx. It was a massive residential project, a block of affordable housing rising from the concrete. The air was thick with dust and the sound of jackhammers. "Hey, new guy, stop dreaming and haul that cement." Damon wiped the sweat from his eyes with the back of a gloved hand. "On it, boss." He wasn't Damon Sterling here. He was just Dave, a day laborer who kept his mouth shut and worked harder than anyone else. His hands, once manicured and soft, were now covered in calluses and healing blisters. His back constantly ached, a reminder of the physical toll of 12-hour shifts. He hauled the heavy bag of cement onto his shoulder, grunting with the effort. His muscles burned, but he welcomed the pain. It felt like penance. He was making $18 an hour. It was a joke compared to his old salary, but it was honest money. He lived in a basement apartment, in a shared house in Astoria, sleeping on a futon. Every Friday he went to the Western Union. He sent a money order for $300 to a P.O. box he had set up, addressed to Leo Rothschild, C. Arstyle, Arthur Penhaligon. He knew he couldn't send it directly to the Rothschild estate. Alexander would burn it. But he hoped Arthur, out of old loyalty, would ensure Serafina knew he was trying. He ate ramen noodles. He read library books. And he thought about the engineering flaws in the building he was working on. One afternoon during a lunch break, Damon sat on a steel beam eating a sandwich. He was looking at the blueprints the foreman had left on a table. "You got a problem with the plans, Dave?" The foreman, a burly man named Miller, chewed on a toothpick. Damon hesitated. He wasn't supposed to know how to read complex architectural schematics. "Oh, just looking, it looks like. Isn't that load-bearing wall a bit thin for the HVAC unit going on the roof?" Miller laughed. "Look at the engineer over here. Stick to carrying rocks, Dave. The guys in the suits know what they're doing." "I'm serious," Damon said, his voice firming up. "If you put a 10-ton HVAC unit on that span without reinforcement, and we get a heavy snow load next winter, the roof could collapse. It's a shear stress issue." Miller stopped chewing. He looked at Damon, really looked at him for the first time. He saw the intelligence behind the grime, the way Damon held the blueprint. "Who are you, really?" Miller asked quietly. "Just a guy trying to make rent," Damon said, looking away. "But check the math, Miller. Please, people are going to live here." Miller grunted and snatched the blueprints. 2 hours later, the site architect was called down. There was a lot of yelling, a lot of pointing, and then a reluctant nod. The plans were changed. Damon saved the project a catastrophic failure. He didn't ask for credit. He just went back to mixing cement. Meanwhile, in the solarium of the Rothschild estate in Hamptons, Serafina sat watching Leo on his playmat. He was 6 months old now, small for his age but strong. He had Damon's dark hair. Another letter came. A voice said. Serafina looked up. Arthur Penhaligon stood in the doorway. He wasn't her lawyer, but he had become a sort of neutral courier. "My father will fire you if he knows you're bringing these," Serafina said, reaching out her hand. "Your father can't fire me. I'm retired." Arthur smiled. "And besides, the boy has a right to know his father exists." He handed her a plain white envelope and a money order for $300. Serafina looked at the money order. It was pathetic, really. A drop in the ocean compared to the trust fund Leo had. But she ran her thumb over the signature. The handwriting was shaky, jagged, the handwriting of a man whose hands were tired from physical labor. She opened the letter. Dear Serafina, don't expect you to read this. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that I am working. I am sober, and every day I wake up trying to be a man worthy of the son I abandoned. I saw a picture of him. He is beautiful. He looks like you. Enclosed is child support. It is 40% of my paycheck this week. I know you don't need it, but I need to send it. A father provides. I will not come near you. I will not disturb your peace. But I am out here, and I am changing. D. Serafina felt a lump in her throat. She had spent months hating him. She had screamed into a pillow, cursing his name. But this was different. The Damon she knew would have sued for custody. He would have gone on TV to cry about his victimhood. This Damon was silent. He was suffering. And he was trying. He's working construction, Arthur said quietly. In the Bronx. 60 hours a week. He lives in a basement. Good, Serafina said, wiping a tear. He needs to know what real life is. He saved the site from a structural collapse yesterday, Arthur added. Didn't ask for a raise. Just did it. Serafina looked down at Leo, who was gumming a soft toy. Keep the letters. Serafina looked down at Leo, who was gumming a soft toy. Keep the letters, Arthur. Put the money in a savings account for Leo, but don't tell Damon I'm reading them. Why not? Because, Serafina said, her eyes hardening slightly. He broke me, Arthur. Fixing a roof doesn't fix a marriage. He has a long way to go before I even consider letting him see Leo. The turning point came in December. Damon had been promoted to site foreman. He was still living in the basement, saving every penny. He had heard rumors that Titan Industries, the company Isabella worked for, the company that had destroyed him, was bidding on a massive city contract to renovate the subway tunnels. Damon knew Titan's playbook now. They cut corners. They bribed inspectors. If they got the subway contract, they would endanger millions of commuters. He was at a diner reading the paper when he saw the announcement. Titan Industries unveils plans for Manhattan Transit overhaul. And there, in the photo, standing next to the mayor, was Isabella. She looked glamorous, triumphant. Damon felt the old rage flare up, but he tamped it down. Rage was useless. Action was what mattered. He needed to stop them, not for revenge, though that would be sweet, but because he knew the steel supplier Titan used. He knew because he had used them in his early days, before he knew better. Their steel was high in sulfur, bristled in cold temperatures. He had to get the proof, but to get the proof, he had to go back into the world he had left. He had to sneak into the Titan Gala being held that Friday night. He didn't have a suit. He didn't have an invitation, but he had a hard hat, a reflective vest, and the knowledge of every service entrance in the city. Damon stood up, leaving a tip on the table. It was time to crash a party. The Pierre Hotel ballroom was a sea of diamonds, tuxedos, and hollow laughter. The Titan Industries Gala was the event of the season. At the podium, Isabella Caldwell stood in a shimmering red gown, basking in the applause of the city's elite. We are building a future that is stronger, safer, and faster, she announced, raising a glass. Behind her, a massive screen displayed renderings of the new subway tunnels. With the mayor's support, Titan will redefine New York. In the back of the room, near the kitchen service doors, a man in a waiter's uniform adjusted his collar. Damon Sterling hadn't shaved his beard, but he had trimmed it. He looked rugged, older, and dangerously focused. He held a silver tray, but instead of champagne, it held a stack of documents he had retrieved from his old encrypted cloud server files he had saved from his early dealings with Titan's suppliers. Files that proved their steel was chemically unstable at freezing temperatures. He moved through the crowd. He saw former friends who looked right through him. He saw bankers who had foreclosed on his home. He didn't care. His eyes were locked on Isabella. as Isabella finished her speech and the mayor stepped up to shake her hand. Damon walked onto the stage. Security moved to intercept him, but Damon's voice rang out, projected by the microphone he snatched from the podium stand. "Don't sign that contract, Mr. Mayor." The room went dead silent. Isabella's smile vanished. She squinted against the spotlight. "Security. Get this vagrant off the stage." "You know me, Isabella?" Damon said, his voice steady. He turned to the crowd. "I am Damon Sterling. And yes, I am a disgrace. I lost my company. I lost my family. I am nobody." Murmurs rippled through the room. Phones were raised, recording. "But I know how Titan builds," Damon continued, slamming the documents onto the podium. "They are using grade 4 recycled steel for the tunnel supports. It contains high sulfur content. In the winter, when the ground freezes, that steel becomes brittle. If you let them build those tunnels, they will collapse within 5 years, and thousands of people will die." "He's lying!" Isabella shrieked, her composure cracking. "He's a bitter, bankrupt ex-husband trying to sabotage me." "Check the manifest," Damon said, looking directly at the mayor. "The supplier is Vulcan Steel. I used them once on a warehouse in Jersey. The roof caved in 3 months later. I paid for it. I learned. Titan knows this. They are choosing profit over lives." Isabella lunged for him, her nails aiming for his face, but 2 uniformed police officers stepped onto the stage, not to arrest Damon, but to intercept her. From the front row, a slow clapping began. Alexander Rothschild stood up. He walked to the stage, his cane tapping rhythmically. He picked up the documents Damon had slapped down. He adjusted his glasses, read the top page, and looked at the mayor. "These are authentic," Alexander announced, his voice carrying the weight of billions. "And if Titan is knowingly using substandard materials, that is criminal negligence. Officer, I suggest you take Ms. Caldwell into custody for questioning regarding fraud." Isabella was dragging away, screaming obscenities, her red dress tangling in her legs. The Queen of Titan was finished. Damon didn't stay to watch her fall. He felt no joy, only exhaustion. He turned to walk off the stage, back toward the service exit. "Damon." He stopped. Alexander was standing there. The old man didn't smile, but the glacier in his eyes had thawed, just a fraction. "You saved this city a great deal of pain tonight," Alexander said. "You could have asked for money. You could have blackmailed her. Instead, you came here to protect people who don't even know your name." "I didn't do it for them," Damon said quietly. "I did it because I want to be the kind of man my son won't be ashamed of." Alexander nodded slowly. "My car is outside. Get in. I have a shift at the site tomorrow, Alexander." "I can't." "Get in the car, Damon." The ride was silent. The limousine wound through the streets, but instead of heading to the Bronx, it headed toward the Upper East Side. It pulled up to the curb of a familiar brownstone. Damon's breath hitched. "Why are we here?" "Go inside," Alexander said, staring straight ahead. Damon walked up the steps, his heart pounding harder than it had on the stage. He rang the bell. The door opened. Serafina stood there. She held a sleeping baby in her arms. She looked beautiful, stronger than he remembered, but her eyes were guarded. "You made the news," she whispered. "My phone has been blowing up. They're calling you a hero." "I'm not," Damon said, afraid to step over the threshold. "I'm just a guy who knows about bad steel." He looked at the bundle in her arms. "Is that?" "This is Leo," she said. She stepped back, leaving the door open. An invitation. Damon stepped inside. The hallway smelled of lavender and baby powder, a scent of peace he hadn't known in a year. "Can I?" He held out his rough, calloused hands, then pulled them back, ashamed of the dirt under his fingernails. "I'm dirty. I shouldn't touch him." Serafina looked at his hands, the hands that had built a home for the poor, the hands that had exposed corruption. the hands that had sent every spare dime to her. "Your hands are clean, Damon," she said softly. She placed the baby in his arms. Leo shifted, opening sleepy eyes that were the exact shade of Damon's steel gray. He yawned and grabbed Damon's finger with a grip that was surprisingly strong. Damon Sterling, the man who had lost an empire, wept. He cried silent, shaking tears that fell onto his son's blanket. He had lost the Sterling Tower. He had lost the billions. He had lost the status. But as he held his son, with his wife watching him not with hatred but with a cautious, fragile hope, he realized the truth. He hadn't lost everything. He'd just cleared away the rubble to find the only thing that was real. "I will fix this," he promised Serafina, not looking up from his son's face. "I will work every day for the rest of my life to fix this." "I know," Serafina said, reaching out to rest her hand on his shoulder. "Coffee is in the kitchen. Don't wake him." Outside, the rain began to fall, washing the city clean. And that is how Damon Sterling lost a kingdom of lies to build a home of truth. It's a harsh lesson, isn't it? Sometimes we have to lose absolutely everything we think we need, just to realize what we actually have. Damon paid a heavy price: his pride, his wealth, and nearly his family. But he earned back his soul in the dust of a construction site. What would you have done if you were Serafina? Would you have opened that door, or is some betrayal too deep to forgive? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss an upload. Until next time, stay safe and remember, the truth always wins.